Assalamu alaikum. The other day I asked you a question on animal experiments, and I would like to cite a certain example and ask whether...
Yes, please go ahead.
I think recently they performed an experiment on the significance of human touch and human, that's body touch between mother and the child. And they performed this experiment on chimpanzees. And there were 3 experiments they performed. The first one was where the child of a chimpanzee mother was separated from the mother, and the mother couldn't see him and mother couldn't touch him either. And it is said that the result was that the chimpanzee child died after a few days, and when they investigated about his brain, that was pretty badly damaged. Number 2 experiment was where the mother could see him through the glass but couldn't touch him, and he seemed to survive a bit longer, but still he died after a few days, and his brain was damaged as well. And third one was where they put iron bars between...
And was he fed on artificial milk or what? During that time, was he ever fed with the milk of the mother, or even if through the aid of help of bottles and things? And was it the mother's milk which was being fed to him, or was it just another synthetic milk or something?
I do not know that, but I think they were trying to prove what was the significance of human touch, mother with his child. But the milk part I don't know.
No, but this is a very stupid way, anyway, a cruel way plus a very stupid way.
Yeah.
They know many children here whose mother cannot touch the child, and they survive all right. Must they first experiment on chimpanzees and then draw the conclusion that the human children will not survive? This is a very stupid way of doing it. Apart from other things, it is cruel, of course. And it is, one shouldn't condone such a thing, because Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has categorically said it in connection with animals, in birds, for instance, that no mother should be tried, what is the word, exact translation is, should be put to pain because of her child. That is through the means, through giving her suffering by separating her from the child or doing some injury to the child. That is what it means. So this is exactly what they are doing. So Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has categorically spoken on this subject, and also it's a futile exercise, meaningless exercise. They could do much better here by experimenting this on human beings, and still they will not suffer. The child will not suffer, because we know children to survive, despite the fact that the mothers die either during the parturition period or immediately after, and the children survive all right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hazur, this question is concerning 12 tribes of Israel which left Palestine at a certain time. Now, first of all,
not all the
12 tribes.
Did they leave Palestine? All of them?
That's what I'm going to ask you, sir.
10 tribes were expelled from the mainland, that is Judea, within Judea they lived. At different times of history, not all together, all of them.
But there is one...
I mean, in one, for instance, one invasion, some tribes were expelled, at another invasion, some others had to migrate, and due to the difficult conditions or due to the vengeance of the ruling, of the government, because they attempted a rebellion or were at least alleged to have attempted rebellion. So,
but these 10 tribes, there were 10 tribes who were expelled from Palestine at various times.
Yes, that's right.
Now the point is, were they expelled or did they leave voluntarily?
No, not voluntarily, not at all. In fact, the Jews were constantly hoping to have their own government, and they still hope to have a world government. So the Israeli plans are not just for Palestine, that is just a springboard to them. They believe that Hazrat David, whom they consider a king and not a prophet, but they revere him very highly, and because he is the one through whom the promises of a worldwide government have reached generations. And it is, the belief of all the Jews that ultimately the house of Israel, through David, because he is the original one whom it was promised, would conquer the entire world. Palestine is just a stepping stone towards that ultimate objective. Now this is so old that ever since the time of Hazrat Dawood alayhi salatu wasalam, or rather from the time of the loss of the great empire after the death of Hazrat Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, they have been attempting repeatedly to overthrow the government of that province that was under Roman rule, and at least have some foothold in that area. From then on they could spread to the adjacent countries and enlarge their territory. Now these attempts failed, and because of that they were invaded by the central government, at the instance of central government, by nearby rulers who were in fact tributaries of the greater Roman Empire, or through other factors. Different times, different things happen. Anyway, the net result was that they were trampled upon, they were destroyed, annihilated. It was seen that the temple of Solomon was totally demolished and effaced from earth, and it was defiled. In fact, so much so that at the time when Hazrat Umar Radhiyallahu Ta'ala Anhu conquered that area and visited that place, it was a heap of refuse and filth, the most sacred place. So because of this long history of repeated attempts to capture the government and their subsequent defeats, things were made so hot for them, so intolerable in that area, that those tribes particularly who were involved in one particular rebellion, they either could not live or they were expelled by the government. But they never went out of volition.
I have read that book where about this conspiracy to form a world government. They have used different words. I forgot the name of that book. It's a very good book.
This is the protocol of the elders of Zion.
Yeah, that's right.
And the commentary, which is a very useful commentary, and in fact you can't understand the true import of the book without the help of that commentary. That is written perhaps by a Protestant bishop or something, I don't remember, but a church representative from the Protestant sect. He has made a lot of research on this, and the book he has written is named Waters Flowing Eastwards.
Yes.
I don't know why he has chosen this title, but it was found once in the market under this title. He has not only commented on this small booklet, Elders of Zion, but also he has traced the entire history of the struggle between the Jews and the non-Jewish forces about this book. Throughout, the Jews have been trying to disown it and trying to prove it to be a forgery.
I see.
On the contrary, at various times, various people, Christians and others, have attempted to prove it to be an authentic book, a true representative book of the Jewish elders. Now this has sometimes, this issue has been taken to courts, and at such times it was so organized that when the issue was taken to courts by Jews, the jury happened to be under the full influence of the Jews, and sometimes the judge himself was a Jew. So at one such opportune moment in Switzerland, they took the matter to the court, High Court of Switzerland, whatever it is called, and they categorically declared that this book is a forgery. It has nothing to do with the Judaism, and it's entirely a concocted thing and has no authenticity. Now they mentioned, the Jews propagated it all over the world, that this book has been proved to be totally a wrong one. I mean, a false allegation and nothing more. Yet what they forget to tell about, or they withhold from the rest of the world, is the fact that an appeal was made against this decision, and the Supreme Court of the same country totally disagreed and quashed the proceedings of the High Court and declared that this book is not a forgery but is a truly authentic work of the Jews. So he also traces other attempts and the Jewish attempts to suppress this, Jewish attempts to, first of all, create an impression that it is a hollow, hocus pocus thing, has no substance. Number two, the Jewish attempts to take away the entire books published from the market at whatever cost. All those books which are published on this subject are immediately immediately removed from the market, and they disappear within a matter of few days. And that author has also researched on this, and he quotes instances after instances where certain attempts were made by non-Jewish people to introduce this book to the public, and when it came to the market, immediately it got disappeared. And investigations showed that some rich Jewish houses bought the entire stock, lock, stock and barrel, and destroyed them. And threats were created on those houses which published these books. Only recently a book has come out in the market in England. Research has been made on this subject, and the author of that book has disclosed certain very important facts, and he has also authenticated them, and he's given full evidence. He was working on the ways and means of Freemasons. Allegations are made against such Freemasons, and he made full investigations about each investigation. And he seems to be a very, very fair-minded person, because he has given full credit for any possibility of doubt. And whatever he establishes after his argumentation appears to be a very weighty thing, not to be dismissed lightly. Now, he also speaks on the same thing. He says a very strange thing happened when this book was given to publishing house. They were extremely enthusiastic about it, and they decided, and we went into an agreement, and it was about to be published, when unfortunately that publishing house was bought by some other people. How it happened, I don't know, he says. And he gave the names and everything. Now, there were two brothers who became the managing board of that publishing house later on, I mean members of the managing board, and they kept on dilly-dallying and wouldn't offer any reason why the book was not published. So ultimately he lost patience and he went to see them and said, look here, I want a very clear answer. We have gone into an agreement and your press was so, house was so enthusiastic about this book. Why this backing out now? So the excuse they offered was simply this, which is of course very lame excuse, but that shows something deeper within. He says, unfortunately for you, our father happens to be a Freemason, and we cannot afford to displease him. Whatever costs we have to pay towards this, whatever costs we have to suffer, this will not happen. And this book will not be published by our house. That was final. So it was with great difficulty he ultimately succeeded in have this book published. So this happens even now here, nowadays. I'm talking of just a recent incident. And in the book which you have referred to, Protocol of the Elders of Zion,
Yes, sir.
that book claims that the organization which will be known to the public eye, controlled by the elders,
Yes.
would be Freemasonry. And people will only know Freemasons, and beyond that there would be 30 tiers or 29 tiers, altogether 30 tiers. 29 tiers of secret organizations, one above the other, which will be completely unknown to the public. And we will manage to move things through the instrument of Freemasonry. And if something happens, we will exert pressures. Now this claim is exactly proved right when you study the history of Freemasonry. And the plan of Freemasonry which has been mentioned there, that also has come true. Also, that book mentions the future shape of the world, what type of the world government would come into being. And in that book, which was first discovered, it was written much earlier, first discovered in 1897 something in Germany, and later on it was smuggled to Russia and first came to light in 1905. It first came to light to the Russians earlier, but the first English version was published in 1905 in England. Now that book speaks of the United Nations so clearly, as if a prophet is making a prediction which has come true right to the letter. It speaks also of the World Health Organization, of the Children's Fund and things, of the aid program of the United Nations, and how the entire world would be brought under the influence of the United Nations, and that United Nations would ultimately be controlled by jury.
Yes, right.
You know?
Yes.
Now, this author, which I am mentioning, has made all that research, and he also quotes certain very important authorities on this subject, political authorities, their opinion. And as if I remember rightly, I think he quotes Disraeli, that when he was asked about his opinion about this book, Disraeli remarked that either this book is genuine, it's not hocus pocus at all, it has to be genuine, or it must have been written by a very great prophet of God. Because whatever is mentioned in this book would happen in future is exactly happening like this. So we have no alternative. Either to believe that one hidden prophet of God appeared and wrote this book and disappeared without making himself known and introduced to the world, or this book is genuine. Again, this author has mentioned some attempts in Turkey to suppress this book and to plant a sort of evidence which would mislead the people about the authenticity of the book. And it mentions a very interesting incident that, you know, Turkey at one time has been completely under the sway of Freemasons during the Kemal Atatürk time and onwards. This book says that a research was made by the Jews in Turkey, and it came to light that it was a Turkish someone who in fact wrote this book long before it was discovered to be a document of the jury, and that was published and they proved it, and they stopped their research at that. This author followed the line up and found that in fact it went beyond, and this is what the Jews suppressed. That author had taken this. He was not an author. He was only a translator of a book which dated back to the time of Marx.
Yes, sir.
And it was published a few years before Marxism came into being. And in that book it is prophesied that we would give the world pseudo-philosophies and break the world into two blocks, Eastern and Western bloc. And the communist philosophy is discussed there in that book. And also the philosophy of capitalism and the usury and things, and how through the banking system and the war between these two blocks ultimately will control both these big powers. This is what surprised Disraeli, in fact, or some other thinkers of the time, that if this book dates back to time prior to the creation of Marxism, and it speaks so clearly of what is going to happen to the world and how the world would be politically divided into two camps, how could it be a forgery? It has to be a design, a plan, and also a plan by people who know how to execute their plans. Must be a very powerful group behind the author, because it is not the work of an individual author either. So this is a very interesting book. I wonder if it is available in the market, because when it was published, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Salis got hold of a few copies, and he gave me 2 books, presented to me, gifted 2 books, and one was meant for Waqf Jadid and one for my personal use. So we have those 2 copies. But I think he also gave a few others, distributed to others. But later on, when we tried to get the book, it had disappeared. So try to contact some publishing house here or some bookshop and find if you can get hold of this book. This is a very interesting study. Yes. Although you didn't ask all this, which I have answered, but I thought it was a subject which would be beneficial for the rest to know. They should also know what is happening, what intrigues are being made against Islam and religion and things, This is an intrigue against all that is good, because that book is a very, very serious threat to the entire world morality. Also in this it is discussed, what you are saying today in newspapers, in magazines, in television and all that, that has been also mentioned in that book, that we will give new trends to the world of debauchery and luxurious life, and we will create new markets for this, so that the entire world wealth is diverted to these so-called sources of pleasure or relaxation or things, and the entire attention of the people would be directed towards sex and sexuality and the concomitant things. And this would give us opportunity to create industries and also to corrupt people's mind so that they don't think beyond their noses, and they don't see beyond their noses in future. They will get so deeply involved. Also through this will corrupt the hierarchy of every government and will be in a power to blackmail them then. Will give them new ways of luxury, will explode all the taboos imposed by religion on these things. And we'll say, what is wrong with this? What is wrong with this? We'll give them ways of beastly pleasures. And they will make them so accustomed to these that they will be sort of addicted to such pleasures. They will not be able to break away from these chains. And once we have got them, we'll make such governments further corrupt. And if they then play to our tunes, they will remain in power. If not, we'll disclose all their secrets, we'll publicize their briberies, their luxuries, their pleasure seeking and things which are going to embarrass them, and they will be forced to resign. And we'll do the same thing to the next government and so on. So these designs are discussed in such detail, and this is exactly what is happening nowadays in the world. You know what happens to the Japanese ministers who for a time being play to the tune of the CIA, and during that course they are bribed through big houses, financial commercial houses or big aeroplane companies and things, manufacturing companies. And once they fall out of favor, those things which were known to everybody even before the higher ups, they were immediately published. And these things are happening everywhere in the world. No government can afford to get out of their clutches because every government is corrupt. So they have published a program of corrupting the world. Without corruption, they say a small minority, however powerful it be, cannot rule the world. So it has to be through corruption that you will rule the world, and through these diabolical pleasure seeking. The diabolical modes of seeking pleasure. Now, this is something which is very interesting for the Ahmadis. There are two facts which are to be known by every Ahmadi. Number one, that Tehreek-e-Jadid plan, the 19 points of Tehreek-e-Jadid, are exactly the antidote of the entire scheme of the Jews. You will be surprised to find out Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Sani had not read that book. He had completely no idea of what the plan was. But Tehreek-e-Jadid is the only counter and the only message of freedom, only hope of freedom and liberty from their designs and clutches. If you follow that program, they will lose all their charm and power. And the second, much more significant fact is this, that this book was brought to the notice of the English-speaking world in 1905. The first ever translation made of this book was in 1905. And in 1905, Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ was revealed from Allah that Freemason musallat nahi kiye jayenge. Now this is a book which claims that Freemason musallat kiye jayenge. That ultimately the Freemasons will capture the entire world, and the entire world will go under their clutches, and through them we will rule them. And Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ has not the slightest idea what is happening elsewhere. That book was not even known to Indian and Pakistanis until recently. Only recently it was given publicity enough so that everybody started, not everybody, some people began to talk of this book. In those days in Qadian in 1905, Allah tells Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ that Freemason musallat nahi kiye jayenge. Nobody knew the significance at that time. What is happening? Why Freemason musallat nahi kiye jayenge? Who is thinking or planning of capturing the entire world through the agency of Freemasons and so on. And this revelation, in fact, is the only hope for the world. And this revelation is a message to Ahmadiyyat that you will be the only cause of liberation of the rest of the world from this heinous plan of the Jewish people through the instrument of Freemasonry. Because nobody else was told this. Hazrat Masih Maud was told that Musallat nahi kiye jayenge. That means it was a glad tidings to Ahmadis that you don't have to fear from Freemasons. We have given you a program of liberty and freedom which cannot be frustrated by any worldly planners or things. Yes, please.
I just wanted to add in this connection that during recent revolution in Iran, one of the Freemasons' office was occupied by the public.
By?
By the people.
By the government.
By the government. And it was found that most of the people or the influential people heading the oil company or the other organizations and ministers in the governments were all members of the Freemason. And similarly, as Hazur has said, the categories in them, even the building or the office which was existing there, some of the rooms were never known to the her board of directors which were sitting there. And this was all secret from one stage to another. And maybe this was just...
but still, that is just the apparent organization, the only organization known to the world. But behind that there are 29 tiers. And they would grow another Freemasonry immediately. I mean, everything is hidden.
From even the people
the
who are
world,
together,
the worldly people do not know. But the guarantee given to us is by God, who knows all that is hidden.
Quite true.
So we are the only people who are safe. The rest cannot claim, and it's impossible for them to get out of their clutches. Because to them the danger is unknown. They don't know where it will come from and how it is going to be organized and planned ultimately. But the only people in the world who have been given this guarantee of liberation from Freemasonry are Ahmadis. And that was disclosed in 1905. So fantastic that one single revelation of Hazrat Masih Maud should suffice to prove his truth. Because no explanation can be given for this one single line revelation. Freemason musallat nahi kiye jayenge. And what coincidence it is that the same is the year when this book is being published, which discloses the design of the Freemasons. I mean, this is not an ordinary accident. This is a design by Allah. Now, unfortunately, the entire Arab world is now completely under the clutches of Freemasonry. They are fighting the cause of the Arab cause against the Jews, and the entire Arab world has gone Freemason now. Because there is hardly a man worth a song in Arab countries which has not either covert or overt connections with Freemasonry. And when I made inquiries from certain friends, I wanted to warn the Arab world against Freemasonry. So he told me it is a lost cause already. You can't do a thing. Only they would turn against you more and more bitterly for telling the world what is happening. Because all the news media, all the government offices, all the parties, even the Muslim fundamentalists and the bureaucracy, everything has gone under the Freemasonry and nobody can uproot them. So you are, with the grace of Allah, you are the only people in the world today who have been promised by Allah that you would not go under Freemasonry. I would see to it that you don't. Any question? Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Azur, is it right for scientists to experiment on embryos to improve their knowledge?
On human embryo or animal, non-human embryo? Fine?
On human embryos. There was a debate in the House of Parliament recently on...
No, but they're not experimenting on human embryo. They can't be permitted by law.
They do, sir.
Where? How?
Well,
What experiments?
well I go to King's College and...
No, you are thinking of surrogate children and how the
abortion cases.
abortion case is not an experiment on human embryo.
I think they do.
I mean, you have to be clear about what you want to say. You are Ajmal's son?
Yeah.
Yes. I tell you, first find out what exactly is happening. Because to my knowledge, the experiment is being made only on transferring of male cell and the ovum of the mother to a third party, or to develop them in a tube and then transferring it to the mother. Now these two things are being experimented. The one is, obviously this is all right if the mother cannot give birth to a child, give birth to a child from her husband's sperm, and you help her do that scientifically. There's nothing wrong whatsoever, because both are married couple and they have every right to give birth to their own children, and no third party is involved here at any stage. So this is okay. But the second part, which is the surrogate children, that has something different. In fact, the mother becomes another mother, another woman, and it is the sperm of somebody else's husband which is being transferred to another woman. This is what is now being debated. The morality or immorality or advisability or inadvisability of this issue, that is nowadays being debated. Did you have this in mind perhaps, or something else?
I was under the impression that they actually did experiments to see how the fetus develops, because...
Nobody can experiment on this. They can make research through modern technical aids without injuring the fetus, without harming the fetus. They can observe how it is developing and what changes are brought about, or if a woman aborts or miscarries at various stages, of course, then they examine that aborted whatever it is, that stage, that early stage of the fetus, and see what was happening there. And sometimes the abortion takes place under the influence of some drugs, sometimes it takes place under the influence of some certain diseases, and they observe what was the effect of that disease on that particular child. Before it became a child, it was in embryonic stage. So that research is all right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this research whatsoever. It's for the ultimate benefit of the mankind, without sacrificing the interests of the individual. So that is all right. That's all right. Yes, please.
I have praying for that for a long time, and today it struck to my mind that if all the writings from the Prophet Messiah about the Kalima should be printed at this time and spread throughout the world, so it can be great help at this moment.
Yes, we have mentioned those writings in our publications, some very effective central writings, and they are being spread. But the point is that the people don't have time generally for these things. They have to be told very precisely and shortly, in as short a time as possible, what is happening. But they won't have time for reading all the writings of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam. I don't think it would be beneficial in any way. As far as the books of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam are concerned, we are of course publishing them widely now. Here in England we have got into contact with the firm, and they will be published in a very attractive manner, very presentable manner. And if anybody is interested in registering one's orders, it's most welcome.
Actually, my request is this, that humble suggestion, that if from few places some topics of this kalima, where Hazrat Islam explained that we are totally devoted to kalma, and
that I have told you, we have already done that. Excerpts, very effective excerpts on this subject have been incorporated in the small booklet Ik Harfe Nasihana, which has been translated into English, and it is now available under the title of A Crisis of Conscience. And this has been given wide publicity. Not only kalima, but also other fundamentals of Islam have been mentioned by Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam, starting from kalima, of course. They have been published and they are being widely distributed, and they have good influence. That work has already been done.
Exactly.
But whatever is written on kalima, the entire writings of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam, they could not be incorporated in that small pamphlet for many reasons. It would become so bulky that people would lose interest in that, and we will not gain our objective of telling people what is happening. And also it would be a much longish work. We have short of time to collect all these writings where kalima is mentioned, and to publish those in the form of a booklet. That perhaps would be a book by itself. Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam has written so much that I think it would be a voluminous book. So you will, by that time, whatever damage they are trying to do would have been done, if Allah permits.
Exactly.
Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. It's just one short question on chronology, which was puzzling me a little bit, because I was reading in the commentary about the date of the crucifixion, and there's a note in the commentary which seems to imply that it was 28 years later than is commonly believed.
That it was commonly believed.
That it was commonly believed.
What was commonly believed?
The date of the crucifixion.
I see. The date of quite understand. Yes.
Marked the place in the commentary.
Yes. Could you kindly read that passage, please? The relevant passage, I mean.
It says, the period in which early Christians were subjected to persecution and had frequently to take refuge in caves and other places of hiding extends approximately over 309 years, and historical data have corroborated this calculation. As popularly believed, the persecution of Christians began with Jesus' crucifixion in 28 AD and ended with Emperor Constantine's conversion to Christianity in 337 AD, a period of about 309 years. And Constantine was not converted in 337 AD, but in 309 AD. The tragedy of the crucifixion took place 28 years later than is generally believed.
That is, I think, that you have put it rightly. It's a question of chronology.
Yes.
Now, there is a debate between various scholars as to where they should fix the first end of the year, the Christian era. Whether it should be counted from the time of crucifixion or from the time of birth. Now, some scholars believe that because before Christ means before the birth of Christ. So AD, in fact, is, although it is a misnomer for that year, after death, it shouldn't be after death, it should be after the birth or before the birth. So because it is believed that he was about 33 years according to us, or around 30 at the time of crucifixion. So there was a error of about 28 years. It should have preceded, the first end should have been fixed earlier than the crucifixion. Possibly Hazrat Muslim Maud is referring to this debate. How he calculated 28 years exactly, I don't know. Has he mentioned it?
It just mentions it's taken from the chronology by
Are you reading the introduction from the introduction of the Holy Quran or commentary by Mala Ghulam Farid Sahib?
It's the commentary.
I see. So I'm sorry. I thought you were reading the passage from introduction to the Holy Quran. This is why I referred to Hazrat Muslim Maud. I don't think it is mentioned in introduction.
Yeah.
It is mentioned in the commentary. So that means Malak Ghulam Farid Sahib must have taken this from some notes either of Hazrat Muslim Maud, or he might have read it himself in some book that the year should have started 28 years before. Well, it has to be investigated.
The dating of the Christian era is taken from the birth of Jesus itself, not from the date of the crucifixion.
Not from date of crucifixion, according to some scholars, but some say there is a mistake here. In reality, we are counting it from death, while it should have been counted from the birth. This is what I am referring to. He must have read this in some book and got the impression that in reality, the year is being counted from the time of crucifixion, while it should have been counted from the time of birth. While, according to you, in reality it is being counted from the time of birth and not from the time of crucifixion. If that is true, then this adjustment in the time period by 28 years is unnecessary altogether.
Yes, that
Yes.
is what I
Yes,
couldn't quite
that's what you want. Yes. But I don't know where he read it. So I ask you to inquire further and find out who has propounded this view that perhaps the Christian year has started not from the birth but from the time of his crucifixion. Because this the impression might have been received by some, or it may even be true, I don't know, that AD means after death.
well, it's from the...
But it doesn't.
Anno Domini.
Yes, exactly. What does that mean?
Well, it's the year of, translated literally, it's the year of our Lord, which is
But
taken from
what is
the
D?
birth.
What is this D stand for? What's the translation of this word?
Dominus means Lord.
Which means?
Lord.
Just Lord. I see. Dominos, yes.
But I think the actual dating of the...
But in English, at least in India, this has been translated, this abbreviation is taken to stand for after death, while it is not so. So that also indicates some error of judgment somewhere, which has seeped into the literature as well.
Yeah, I think the dating of the Christian era was done in the 6th century by a monk in southern Italy called Dionysius, and he worked out the chronology.
Yes.
but generally it's taken to be 4 to 6 years previous or prior to what is actually fixed at. So it would be 4 or 6 BC.
That is to say that according to you it's already, there is an error but on the other side, wrong side.
That's right.
Yes, so it should not be extended backwards but brought forward.
That's right.
That's what you say.
I think so.
That's very good, yes. So better you make some research on this subject,
Yes.
because this is your subject, I know, and you can do it well with the grace of Allah. So later on, whatever your finding is, you can apprise us for that. Right?
May I ask another question, or
Yes,
somebody
please,
else
please.
wishes to?
Yes.
I was just going to ask a general question, which you may have answered already at some previous time. What was the relationship between Jesus, peace be on him,
Peace be upon him.
and the Essene community?
Some people claim that Jesus cryptically, quietly belonged to the Essenes group. And Hazrat Yahya, that is John the Baptist, also belonged to the Essenes. And they also claim that in fact it was there that John the Baptist saw in Jesus Christ something, and he declared that you are going to be the future king of Israel, the one we are expecting, and the Messiah. And it was at the suggestion, according to some scholars, at the suggestion of John the Baptist that Jesus Christ got this idea sowed into him, planted into him, and later on he developed. And it is said that at that time, as an Essene, he got initiated into Essenes at the hands of John the Baptist, who was murdered later on, killed later on. Perhaps in the early part of Hazrat Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, before he started his, what do you call it?
Ministry.
Ministry, that's right, yes. So you know the history better than anybody has. Why don't you tell us yourself your opinion on this subject?
Well, I've written it in the manuscript which I was going to
Yes.
send you. I was just inquiring whether my basis of thinking was correct or not. Otherwise it will need a lot of corrections.
This is, I fully agree. Otherwise I couldn't have quoted this. I fully agree, but what I want you to do is to further authenticate it and find some more evidence. Because this is very important. This falls just in step with the Ahmadiyya point of view, except for the fact that there was no planting of idea at all. It was very similar to an incident which happened at the time of Hazrat Masih Maud before he declared his ministry. When he visited Sufi Ahmad Jan, one of the great Sufis of that area of Ludhiana, it was much before his declaration, his revelation. And when he met him after some discussions, he began to see in him the signs, and he addressed him in the following words, which is a verse, a couplet from some Urdu poet. हम मरीजों की है तुम्ही पे नजर, तुम मसीहा बनो खुदा के लिए. That we ailing people are looking at you with hope. May God that you become the Messiah. These were the words of that great Sufi who died before Hazrat Masih Maud started his ministry, and he willed it to his people, his followers, that if he makes a claim ever in future, you follow him. And they kept true to that will of their master, and if not all, a majority among his followers became Ahmadis after Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ claimed to be the promised Messiah. So this incident particularly is important to us because of this similarity between the two. A pious, godly man sees something in the Messiah to be, and tells him that you are going to be the future master. And the same thing is repeated in the time of his second coming. So this is something which should be stressed and brought to limelight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to know if if Islam prohibits the use of unions.
Unions, strikes, not as such. Islam does not permit you to do anything which is destructive in the society and works towards creating a situation of disorder in the country. Anything promotive to such things is prohibited in Islam. Now, the strikes are of two types. Unions are also of two types, legal and illegal. So the illegal strikes are totally prohibited because that would be creating disorder in an established society, and it tantamounts to a sort of rebellion against the law. That is only prohibited. But legal strikes, which the government itself recognizes and permits people to do, they are not at all prohibited. In the time of Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ, things were different. The unions were not yet given any rights. They were not a part of the system. And every strike at the time was illegal because there was no legality at all either in any union or any strike. So Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ, sticking to that fundamental principle of Islam, prohibited in the strongest terms. And Ahmadis, as long as this situation continued, offered great sacrifices for this. Even the students were beaten and jeered and mocked at, but they wouldn't participate in any strike. And some great political political personalities of India have written on this subject of their experience, that they were deeply impressed by the courage and discipline of the Ahmadiyya students. There were one or two, if just, a small number in a huge violent crowd, and they were being beaten and still they were walking towards their classrooms until they fell unconscious. Because, he said, I was told that this was their principle, they were sticking to it. So that was the time when these strikes were illegal. Only a few years ago, not a few, but let's call it about 12, 15 years ago, such a situation occurred again in Punjab University, and a strike was organized by some miscreants, and the Ahmadi students, I was the president of the association, asked my advice. I said, no, it's not permissible because there is no legality about this and you should not participate. So they put up a very strong front and they offered great sacrifices even that time. It's not a very old incident I'm telling you about. It happened just a few years, 10, 15 years ago. But here in England, the thing is very different. When the strike is declared illegal or the union is declared illegal, the people here are so well disciplined that they generally cooperate. If not, of course, they are punished. Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
The question is about some non-Ahmadis. They ask why did not Hazrat Masih Maud do Hajj?
That has been answered repeatedly by us, so much so that it should have been memorized by every Ahmadi by now. The fact is that Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ was prohibited from going to Hajj because of these very mullahs who are now, spreading this propaganda against him. The fact is that these mullahs have got themselves committed in writing in so many words, and these writings have been published widely by them themselves, that Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ was not permitted to go to Hajj because of their malicious propaganda. Because they went from India to Mecca and Medina and had created such atmosphere of hostility towards Masih Maud ﷺ that fatwa, the verdicts, were issued by all the important scholars of the Muslim world at the time, that this person has lost the right to live, and whoever kills him would go straight to heaven, and he should not be permitted to set his foot on the Holy Land, and whoever has access over him, he must murder him there and then. Not only him, but all his followers as well. Now that was the state of affairs for which these very ulama were responsible, which now jeer Ahmadis and mock at them for what sort of prophet he was, a subordinate prophet he was. He didn't even perform Hajj, one of the fundamentals of Islam. Now Islam, the Holy Quran, very clearly declares that you are permitted to go to Hajj only if the passage is safe. If the passage is not safe, you are not expected to force your way. Now should Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ have listened to these or feared these ulamas and their impressions and forced his way at the cost of course, his life, or he should have listened to the word of the Holy Quran, which said, do not go to Hajj unless the passage is safe. And also, should he have listened to these ulama or to the verdict of his master Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who himself, when he faced such a situation, decided in favor of abandoning his desire to perform Hajj rather than force his way to Hajj, and despite these hostility must have performed Hajj willy-nilly. He didn't do that. In fact, at Sulh Hudaybiyah, at the time of Hudaybiyah, when that peace was not yet negotiated, this was exactly the situation in which Ahmad found himself. The Meccans resisted his attempt to perform Hajj, and they sent him the warning that if you ever set foot in the haram, we would destroy you by force. We will raise sword to prevent you, and only if you raise sword against us and there is a battle here and you conquer us, only then you can perform Hajj, not otherwise. No, all the companions of Hazrat Rasul Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, without fail, without a single exception, decided in favor of forcing their way into Mecca. It was only Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam who remained adamant, who said nothing doing, because God has set this condition, unless the passage is safe, you shouldn't perform this Hajj. I will not perform this Hajj. I'm not going to raise the sword and enter the Hajj through bloodshed. It's impossible. There was a time when there appeared to be a sort of rebellion. The only moment in the lifetime of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam where Sahaba seemed to have revolted. Seemed to have, of course they did not. But they were stupefied. They were completely out of their own control because of this rising and raging passion. they were so deeply hurt at this decision that they were dazed. They were almost out of their minds. What happened, that when Hazrat Rasul Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam ultimately decided that we must return from the Hudaybiyah and slaughter our animals of sacrifice here, that was the sign that everything is over. That is the last act done before coming. So he told all the companions to get up and sacrifice their goats and other animals here at this time. And none moved. He repeated again this order and none moved. Not a finger was raised. Now this is so shocking. It's unbelievable, it seems. The Sahaba, the companions, were so obedient to him and loved him so madly that if he raised his finger in one direction, they would go and jump into the oceans or face the hazards of fires and things. Nothing was able to prevent them from following Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The only moment in the history of Islam where this happened was that time, because they wanted so much to perform Hajj and to prove to the Meccans that the dream which Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had seen performing Hajj had come true. Of course, it sprang from that good, very strong reason. I mean, very valid reason. They loved Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam so much, they wanted him to be proved right. Yet, it rose, the tempers rose to such level that when Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told them to sacrifice the animals, they didn't refuse with their tongues, with their lips. But in reality, they did not move. Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was so deeply shocked at this sight. He couldn't believe his eyes. And he went into the tent where one of his wives was accompanying him and in great dejection said, "Look here, this is what has happened." So his wife told him, peace be upon him and her, that Ya Rasulullah, they have gone mad with grief. They are not disobedient. It's impossible for them to become disobedient. So I advise you to go and sacrifice your own goat and then see what happens. This is what he did. And what happened was again something which would never happen again. I mean, that mad rush of Sahaba towards their sacrifices, and their vying with each other to reach their animal of sacrifice before the other, was the strangest thing that happened then. And some Sahaba quote that we were in a state of shock. He aroused us from that state of shock. Then we realized what we were about to do, how we refused to obey him. And the reaction was so strong within us that we made such hurry and such rush toward our sacrifices that even if another companion of his was in the way of that sacrifice, we might have slaughtered him. You know, there was such mad rush and such hurry. Why this? Only the one reason which was responsible for all these fantastic happenings was Allah's injunction in the Holy Quran, that if the passage towards Mecca to Hajj is not safe, do not perform it. It was only Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam who truly understood the import of this message and stuck to it. So how could they expect Hazrat Masih Maud Wasalam to claim to be his complete subordinate, entirely subservient to him, and yet to put his desire above this injunction of the Holy Quran and above this practice of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? This is our answer. If they had done it, then what they would have said, look here, what sort of a subordinate prophet he is. Against the clear injunction of the Holy Quran, he tried to force his way and was murdered. And what would you call that murder? That would not be in the way of Allah. That will be in the defiance of Allah. Do they want this to happen to the Prophet of the time? That he dies a death of defiance? I mean, won't be a martyrdom. Had it been a martyrdom, then of course one would have, raised some questions. It was a very good occasion for his being martyred, justifiably, and he refused to avail of that opportunity. But that's not what happened. Had Hazrat Masih Maud attempted an Hajj, and had he been killed, of course he would have been at that time, then his death would be not a martyr's death, but a death of a person who defies his Lord and then dies. He wouldn't do that.
And in the same connection, what will be the instructions to the Ahmadis from you? Because
my instructions are that if for any Ahmadi today the passage is safe, he should go. Otherwise not. But also my instructions are that if to make the passage safe he has to tell lies, he must not go. Because there is another crime of the same nature. You can't reach truth through the alleys of lies. It's impossible. So the moment you make a false statement to perform Hajj, your Hajj is automatically annulled and falsified by Allah. And what you do is not an act of goodness but an act of sin, plus the added sin of telling a lie. So this is my clear instruction to Ahmadis.
thank you very much.